Well, the elections were held this week for the 41-nation board of the new UN Women group, and two nations that were pretty controversial that were up for seats on the board were Iran and Saudi Arabia. Now, Iran got blocked from the board largely because of U.S. opposition. And, one case that was mentioned a lot was the recent stoning sentence for a woman convicted of adultery. But Saudi Arabia, which is actually ranked by the UN lower than Iran on women's rights issues, made it onto the board.
Yeah, I haven't heard any applause coming from the women's section over here in the studio today. Josh, this has to be, women looking at this, how do they think that will affect any of the decisions that this body might make, what they look at?
Yeah, well, it's not a very auspicious start for this organization, but they say that, this is being led by Michelle Bachelet, the former president of Chile, and they say with these other nations on the board, they're still going to be able to pursue a progressive agenda, but, Saudi Arabia is going to be there to make sure that, try and make sure that none of these policies get in the way of their kind of traditional laws in Saudi Arabia, which include not letting women drive, barring them from many occupations and public places.
Well, it's going to be some interesting discussions in that organization. But let's move on from women's rights to freedom of the press. A very unlikely supporter of press freedom surfaced this week.
Yeah, 20 journalists were arrested and then released this week in Libya, and they worked for a news agency which is owned by Saif al-Gaddafi, who's the son of Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi. These journalists were eventually freed after, Father Gaddafi stepped in and freed them. But it's setting up an interesting kind of dynamic where the very reform-minded agenda being pushed by Saif, he's going up against some of his father's closest hardline allies.
Well, and Saif Gaddafi has been one. He's been trying to talk about reform all across the spectrum, opening up a little more free speech in Libya. Does he have the support of young people, the support of, well, what we might call liberals there in Libya?
Yeah, well, we're not exactly sure. They didn't say why exactly these people were arrested. Reporters Without Borders issued a report saying they believe it was linked to an editorial that called for former allies of Gaddafi who had been sent into exile to be allowed to return and take part in the government. So, a very controversial statement and one that got them in hot water, but I would imagine for these hardliners it's not very smart to be picking a fight with the leader of the revolution's son either.